There's a man living in the relentless pulse of Sao Paulo, a city where the lights never go out, yet his mind has never known rest. For months he couldn't sleep, not because he had failed, not because someone had left him, but because he was trapped in the fear of what might happen. Every night, when the city finally fell quiet, his mind didn't. It started running a different kind of movie. Worst-case scenarios, collapsing futures, fears with no evidence. Yet they felt painfully real. Until one moment, ordinary on the surface, but powerful enough to change everything. He stopped. No distractions, no escape, and asked himself one simple question. How many of the things I'm worried about have actually happened? The answer hit him harder than he expected. Almost none of them. Most of his fear wasn't coming from reality. It was coming from his imagination, an imagination left completely unchecked. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize you've been there too. How many nights have you stayed awake? Not because life was truly that hard, but because your mind wouldn't slow down? Here's the truth. You're not suffering because of what's happening. You're suffering because of what you believe is going to happen. And the moment you truly understand that, you don't just find peace. You begin to take your life back. Pause for a moment and answer me honestly. If today were the last day you existed in this world, would you still care about an unanswered text? A negative comment from a stranger? Or the cold glance of someone who never truly understood you? There was a woman in Rio de Janeiro. Before everything changed, her life looked like everyone else's, busy, anxious, easily pulled into small things. An unanswered email could stay in her mind all day. A careless remark could ruin her mood for an entire week. Until the day she received a diagnosis, that changed everything. Within 24 hours, all the pressures that once weighed her down were gone. Not because they were solved, not because life suddenly became easier, but because for the first time she saw the truth. Most of what she had been worrying about never truly mattered. That is the essence of Memento Mori, an uncomfortable but deeply accurate reminder. You are going to die. Not to scare you, but to wake you up. Because when you truly understand that your time is limited, you begin to see everything through a different lens. And suddenly, the things that once kept you awake at night become far too small to deserve your attention. There was a young man in Brazil, the night before the most important interview of his life, yet he wasn't preparing the way you'd expect. He lay there, eyes wide open in the dark, replaying questions with no answers. What if they don't like me? What if someone else is better? The more he thought, the more exhausted he became. Not because he lacked ability, but because he was pouring all of his energy into things he would never have the power to control. The next morning, he walked into that interview with a scattered mind, and he failed. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because he had already lost the night before. Those who follow Stoic philosophy see life very differently, in a way that may seem cold at first, but is deeply freeing. They divide the world into two clear parts. On one side, what belongs to them. Their effort, their response, their preparation. Everything they can control down to the smallest detail. On the other side, everything else. The outcome, other people's decisions, luck, circumstances. And here's the key. They invest their energy only in the first. The rest they let go. Not because they're weak, but because they understand something most people ignore. You cannot win a battle you were never meant to fight. And when you truly live by this principle, a strange feeling begins to emerge. Not excitement, not adrenaline, but a deep, quiet sense of relief, as if you finally set down a weight you didn't even realize you'd been carrying for so long. Imagine a situation that feels familiar, but is far more dangerous than you realize. A girl sends a message to someone she cares about. The text goes through. Everything seems completely normal. 1 hour passes, then 2, then 3. No reply. And in that moment, something else begins to take over. Not the outside world, but the world inside her mind. Thoughts start to appear uninvited. Maybe he's lost interest. Did I say something wrong? What if I'm not good enough? The emotions follow those thoughts, growing heavier, tightening around her chest. But here's what's crucial to understand. All of this is happening only in her mind. Reality? His phone died. Nothing more. Nothing less. This is the mechanism most people never become aware of. Events by themselves are neutral. They carry no meaning, no intention, no pain. But an untrained mind refuses to accept that neutrality. It fills in the gaps with stories, often negative, often completely wrong. A successful entrepreneur in Brazil once said, "The moment I stopped assigning negative meaning to everything, my life became lighter." So the next time your mind starts building a story, pause. And ask yourself one sharp, grounding question. What actually happened? No extra layers. No assumptions. Just raw facts. That's how you take your power back. There's a kind of fear many people carry every single day, but never dare to name. A man with a stable job, a life that looks perfectly normal on the outside. But deep within, he lives with a quiet, persistent nightmare, being fired. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't face it. He just avoids it. Every time the thought surfaces, he distracts himself, scrolling his phone, watching something, keeping busy. But what he fails to realize is this. The fear you avoid doesn't disappear. It grows in the dark. It builds silently until it becomes an invisible pressure that never truly leaves your mind. Until one day, a mentor tells him something that feels completely against his instincts. Sit down and imagine the worst possible outcome. Don't avoid it. Don't soften it. Go all the way. At first, he hesitates, but then he does it. He pictures everything in vivid detail. Being called into the room, hearing the decision, walking out of the office, no income, starting over from nothing. And then, something unexpected happens. He doesn't collapse under that vision. He's still there, still thinking, still capable of acting. In that moment, the fear loses most of its power, because it's no longer a shapeless shadow. This is the principle of Premeditatio Malorum, not to make you pessimistic, but to make you face what you fear most, until you realize, it may be difficult, but it cannot destroy you. There's something most people don't want to hear, yet it determines the depth of their inner strength. A coach in Brazil used to give his students instructions that made no sense at first. Cold showers every morning, running in the rain, staying away from their phones for hours, in silence. No clear fitness goal, no instant reward. Just one reason, simple, but difficult to accept. You cannot become strong if you're always comfortable. The truth is, most people today aren't weak because they lack ability. They're weak because they've never experienced real friction. They've trained themselves to choose the easy path, to avoid discomfort, to soothe themselves the moment tension appears. And then, when life finally tests them, job loss, pressure, heartbreak, they have nothing inside to rely on. Not because they're incapable of enduring, but because they've never trained themselves to endure. Real confidence is not built through words or affirmations in front of a mirror. It doesn't come from feeling ready. It comes from evidence. The moments you wanted to quit, but didn't. The times you faced discomfort and refused to back down. When you repeat that long enough, something quiet begins to form within you. Not the belief that everything will be easy, but something far more powerful. No matter how hard it gets, I can handle it. There's a very subtle trap, one most people never even realize they're caught in, especially in an emotional, high-energy culture like Brazil. They wait. They wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. They wait for the right mental state to begin. And while they're waiting, life keeps moving. A successful entrepreneur once shared something that sounds simple, but completely shatters that illusion. If I only acted when I felt inspired, I would have never succeeded. He didn't say it as a slogan. He said it as truth, paid for with years of delay, failure, and self-deception. Because the reality is this: emotions are unstable. They shift with your sleep, your environment, even the smallest things you can't control. If you place your actions under the authority of your emotions, you're handing control of your life to the most unpredictable force within you. Those with emotional discipline understand something most people resist. Emotions are signals, not commands. You may not feel like doing the work. You may not feel ready. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't act. In fact, the moments you feel the least like doing something are often the moments when action matters most. Because when you act despite how you feel, you establish a new order. You are the one making decisions, not your mood. And that is where real power begins. There's a kind of pollution you can't see, but it quietly erodes your mind every single day. A man began to notice his habits, not the big decisions but the small ones repeated daily. He wakes up and grabs his phone, scrolls for hours, consumes negative news, looks at other people's lives, and compares. On the surface, it all seems harmless, even entertaining. But then he notices something strange. Nothing is actually going wrong in his life, yet he constantly feels uneasy. One day, he pauses and asks himself a question he had never been clear enough to face before. How can I expect peace if I keep feeding my mind things that disturb it every day? That question changes everything. He doesn't try to force positivity. He doesn't pretend everything is fine. He simply removes the poison. Cuts down over 70% of his social media use, stops consuming news that doesn't serve his life. Nothing dramatic happens overnight, but within 2 weeks, a clear shift appears. His mind feels lighter. His anxiety begins to fade, because for the first time he understands something fundamental. You are not just what you think. You are what you expose yourself to every single day. There's a very common illusion, and a dangerous one, that to change your life you need a big breakthrough, a bold decision, a complete transformation, a single awakening moment that flips everything overnight. But in reality, it rarely works that way. There was a man who believed that. He kept waiting for the perfect moment to begin, a day when he'd feel motivated enough, clear enough, ready enough. That day never came, until he tried something different. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. He started waking up just 10 minutes earlier, not to do anything extraordinary, just to create a moment of quiet for himself. He began walking every day, not to instantly change his body, but to calm his mind. He wrote down a single thought each day, not to become a writer, but to understand himself. Small actions, almost insignificant. No one noticed, no one applauded, but he kept going, day after day. And after 3 months, something hard to explain happened. His life changed, not because of one massive leap, but because of small movements, repeated consistently. Clarity began to emerge. Anxiety started to fade. And most importantly, he began to trust himself, because he discovered a simple yet powerful truth. You don't need to change everything all at once. You just need to change, small enough to start and consistent enough to never stop. In the end, everything comes down to a choice. A quiet one, but one that determines the course of your entire life. You can keep living the way you are now, caught in repetitive thoughts, imagined scenarios, fears with no real evidence, yet draining your energy every single day. A life that mostly exists in your head, where everything feels worse than reality, and you don't even realize it. You pause, not to escape, but to observe. You begin to notice each thought as it arises. You question it. You separate yourself from the stories you once believed were true. And little by little, you take your power back. The truth is, the outside world is rarely as harsh as your mind makes it seem. It's not your circumstances that exhaust you. It's not other people controlling your emotions. It's the way you see things, the way you interpret them, the meaning you assign, that shapes your entire experience. And here's what very few people have the patience to discover. When you change your perspective, not once but consistently day after day, a deep transformation begins. You stop reacting unconsciously. You're no longer pulled around by vague, undefined fears. You become steady. You become clear. And in a quiet, powerful way, you become almost untouchable by the chaos of life.